Welcome to Community of Love Christian Fellowship, where God loves you and we do too. Join us in person on Sundays from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. for 60 minutes of dynamic praise, inspiring fellowship, and life-changing worship. Point your GPS to 557 Cambridge Street in the Alston neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts, 02134. Visit us on the web at colcf.org. That's colcf.org. To learn more about our Friday evening services, our various ministries, and our upcoming special events. Now, let's join the service already in progress.
Oh preaching series entitled Dangerous Minds. It comes to our realization that many of us are struggling with our thinking. We're struggling with what our mind does to us. Back in the day, the Ghetto Boys had a song that said, "My mind is playing tricks on me." And our goal through this series is to train and encourage each of us how to protect our minds from ourselves, from Satan, and then from the world. We borrowed the title from a movie from 1995. Yeah, I'm aging myself here. 1995, there was a movie by the name of Dangerous Minds that starred Michelle Pfeiffer. And the movie was not supposed to be a big hit, but when it came out, there were so many people struggling with the educational system in the country that they were perplexed at how this young former veteran came into the classroom and changed her methodology, her pedagogy, in order to reach the minds and the heart of some young, ostracized, and disenfranchised urban youth. And she came to the classroom and they made fun of her immediately. Y'all know how we do. And then she had to change her style. And she realized that it was not so much about the material or the content, it was about the connection. And that once you can create a connection and build trust, then the person will make their mind up whether they will allow you to teach them or not. The mind is a terrible thing to waste. But the mind also creates scenarios and circumstances that don't always exist in reality. So if you missed part one of the series, it's on the home page of the church website. Right on the landing page is an area that says recap from the week of September 1. You can click on that and pull up the sermon from last week. In a better pursuit to help us protect our minds, I want to give you 3 affirmations. And these are the 3 bullet points for the 3 parts of the sermon series. The first is that one must always remind yourselves that God loves you unconditionally. Last week we wrestled with a passage from Matthew chapter 8 with the leper. And we understand that the leper were those who were diseased, who were ostracized, those who were not allowed to come into public areas. And this one leper lost his mind and thought he was clean. And came into the space and said, "Jesus, I know you can heal me if you want to." And Jesus replied, "I want to, you are healed." And then gave him some instructions. And from that realization, you may have spiritual leprosy in your own mind right now. You may think that you're not worthy of God's blessings. You may think that you're not worthy of a miracle. You may think that God is not paying attention to you right now because he's over blessing everybody else. But I came here to tell you that God loves you unconditionally. If you need more on that, pull up the video from last week. This week, or number two, you cannot live life in fear. You cannot live your life in fear. I'm going to come back and we're going to wrestle with that today. And then for next week, if you need a preview, some of you have a list of engagements going on next week, and you're still trying to figure out which one you're going to do. You're going to come here, you're going to go to brunch, you're going to go wherever. Just next week we're going to cover, you cannot be easy to offend. Spiritual affirmation. If you want to learn to think like God, you cannot be easy to offend. Some of us wear our feelings and our emotions on our sleeves. Somebody look at you the wrong way and you're ready to pop a cap. in fear. Somebody ought to tweet that out there. Help somebody with that. Help somebody with that. Let's turn this afternoon to Matthew chapter 8, verses 23 through 27. There's a wonderful passage here. Jesus is at work again. I'm telling y'all that the season for television shows are just coming to a conclusion and a new season's about to start. Some of y'all can't wait till October, whatever the day is, for Scandal to come back on. Man. I'll tell you, there's more stuff in the Bible if you want some good action-packed stuff. I'm telling you. If your heart is just, if you're calm-hearted and laid back, start in the New Testament. But if you like that bloody, gory stuff, go back to the Old Testament. The Old Testament got something for you. Believe it. Believe it. Matthew 8, verses 23 to 27. Please allow me to read this for your hearing. Then he, this is Jesus, got into the boat, and his disciples followed him into the boat. Suddenly a ferocious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was asleep. The disciples went and they woke him up, saying, Lord, save us. We're going to drown. Jesus replied, you of little faith, why are you so afraid? Why do you fear so much? Then he got up and rebuked the winds and waves, and it became completely calm. Then the disciples were amazed and asked, what kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him. What kind of man is this? Friends, it is easy to be afraid. It's easy to have fear. In fact, it's much easier to be afraid than it is to be courageous. On most days, we're afraid, or we have fear of the unknown. We're afraid of failing. We're afraid or have fear of being embarrassed. We're afraid or have fear of being unprepared. We fear being stuck in a situation with no solution at hand. We fear having our backs against the wall with no solution at hand. We fear of running out of money. We fear of situations bubbling over out of our control. We fear total submission to anything, let alone anybody. These are some of the easy things that we fear. Then there's a category that I call fears for when you're honest with yourself. These are fears that you got to be honest with yourself to really acknowledge and own. There are fears such as the fear of success. What if everything really works out the way I dreamed or visioned or imagined? Will I actually be prepared to do it? Will I really know what to do when I get there? What if I really get that job? Will I be able to keep it? What if I really do get into that school? And I really qualified or capable of achieving my best? Will I fit in? Will I be able to excel? Do I really deserve that promotion? Am I really executive caliber? Am I really qualified? I know they gave it to me for some reason, but am I ready for that? Or fears like this. When I make it, will I still be me? Will I still be able to hang with the folks I used to hang with? Will they still want to be able to, will they want to hang with me? Can I still go to places I used to go? Will people acknowledge me? Or will they think I'm stuck up? That I'm better than everybody else, that I want to get me the education? And am I still going to be who I always was? Or will people just respect me for the title, for the alphabet soup after my name? People won't really love who I am, or they just going to see my title. Fears. Fears. Let me be clear about this. Fear is a disabler. Succumbing to our fears not only leave us paralyzed, but they make us anxious. They create all kinds of anxieties. And when you become anxious, your mind goes off course. Your body becomes tense. Your breathing becomes laborious. and your focus moves from where it should be to where it needs to go in order to deal with the anxiety. See, fear takes over, and fear becomes the subject, and it removes whatever else was the subject. Fear makes you paranoid. Fear causes hallucination. Fear takes your mind into a cold red challenge, when the reality is, there's no emergency. The disciples were fishing. They were out. And historical scholars tell us that they were on the Sea of Galilee. And I got to share a couple of things about the Sea of Galilee, because this was not a big ocean. It was really like a pond. The Sea of Galilee literally is 13 miles long and 7 miles wide. It's not that big. And even though it's not that big, usually there's 300 boats fishing on the Sea of Galilee at the same time. It's about 150 feet deep. And then the shores are about 680 feet below sea level, which means that the water is in the valley, and surrounding the valley are these big mountains. So when the storms come over the mountains, they embark on the water, creating these 20-foot wave surges. But you can't really see the storms coming because you're surrounded by mountains. So the disciples and Jesus were on the boat, and the storm comes, and the waves come, and they start knocking the boat around. Sailboats during this time were used both sails and oars. So they promptly took the sails down so that they wouldn't rip and tear, and they began oaring the boat. You got 13 folks on the boat now. For some reason, fear takes over. For some reason, now why am I saying for some reason? Some of the disciples were professional fishermen from there. So they had been on the Sea of Galilee numerous times, hundreds if not thousands of times, and had been embarked on by storms. But for some reason, this time they got scared. It was 13 of them. Usually on fishing boats, you got 3, maybe 4. You got 13 dudes on the boat. Some could row, some could get the buckets and get the water, but for some reason, all 12 got scared. Now, if you read Matthew 8 before where we pick up, you would know that Jesus just got through doing a bunch of miracles. So you got 12 dudes who would just watch Jesus heal a leper, do all kind of phenomenal stuff, and yet they got scared. Matter of fact, right before this passage, Jesus gives them a lecture on the cost of discipleship. He says, if you're going to follow me, the road will not be easy, but I can promise you a couple of things. 1, I will never leave you, and 2, I will never forsake you. But in spite of just having that lesson 5 minutes ago, they got scared. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was reading this passage, I was like, man, this sounds just like me. You done just finished praying. You just got up, feeling good about yourself, and then the phone rang, and all of a sudden, cripples. You just had a phenomenal service and seen folks you haven't seen in weeks, and hugs, and just told folks, I'm so happy to see you, and you walk outside, and then all of a sudden, you look at your phone and the email, you just got home from a long day, and even though it took you all day to figure that situation out, you very next moment we forget. These disciples had Jesus in the boat. It don't get no better than that. I mean, in our sanctified mind, we want to be like, I'll just sit back because I know Jesus ain't going to kill himself in the boat. So, you know what I mean? If he's chilling, then I guess I'll chill too. He is the master of all things, right? I mean, you just seen Jesus. Jesus walked through fire and come unscathed. So I'm like, I'm trying to be down with Jesus. So if Jesus can sleep right now, yo, I'm out. But for some reason, fear took hold. They forgot that they had God's promise sitting next to them. They forgot that they had God's providence sitting next to them. They forgot that they had God's protection sitting next to them. They had God in the flesh sitting next to them. And they got scared. I've had this reoccurring dream for the last 5 or 7 years. I'll share it with you now because I've resolved it. But the dream was I'm in deep sleep. And the dream is that somebody breaks into the house. And I can't wake myself up out of sleep in order to do something about it. Now I've been trained in martial arts and I can do all kind of cool stuff. I mean, just like on the movie, you know, after my knee is healed. But I can get it on. I can get it on. But for some reason, I can't wake myself up out of that REM sleep. So I'm sleeping and having this dream. And it perplexes me because in my sleep, I feel my heart beat just raise. And I feel myself turning on. And I've learned to just think the name Jesus in my sleep. And so anytime those dreams like that, some of y'all had the dream where you fall into the bottomless pit and you're just going and going and going. And some of y'all had the dream where for some reason all your teeth just shatter. It just happens. And there are folks who can read these dreams and stuff, and I'm down with that. That's cool. But for me, I've learned to just say Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Just the mention of the name cools everything out. I can share the dream now because anytime it comes, I just, in my sleep, say Jesus, Jesus. And I start saying Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. In my sleep, Jesus, 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 oh, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And the dream goes away. It's the same realization of these affirmations that when you find yourself in a predicament, remember one, that God loves you unconditionally. That no matter where you've been, what you've done, and who you've done it to, God loves you. No matter what you got and what you've done, God loves you unconditionally. And then remember that God does not want you to live your life in fear. There are many places where Jesus says, fear not, for I, Fear not, because I, Remember that you have the choice to decide whether you will be afraid or not. It's a mental choice. And so part of what we have to do is strengthen our minds to be able to make those hard decisions in those hard times. To decide that I will not be afraid. Though it seems that everything is against me, I will not be afraid. Though it seems that I'm not supposed to make it happen, I will not be afraid. So each day of our lives, my brothers and my sisters, I want us to wrestle with taking the active journey of making the decision to increase our faith step by step. You'll get there. You'll get there. And it will take time. But I want you to give yourself time. So when you wake up every morning, say to yourself, God, I know that you love me unconditionally. I'm claiming for this day. And then say, God, no matter what comes on this day, I choose not to be afraid. And then God, number 3, we'll talk about it next week. God, today, no matter what happens, I will not be easily offended. easily offended. It didn't say, I'm not going to call that situation out and deal with the situation. It says, I will not be easily offended. It doesn't say I'll be passive aggressive. It says, I will not be easily offended. We like to be clear around here. I want you to hear something I have to say. I'm praying that we can protect our minds against ourselves, against Satan, and against the world by focusing our energy and making a commitment, a mental commitment to these three affirmations. Know that as you pray for yourself, that we're praying for you and with you. And that God promises that you are not ever alone. You may not see us praying for you, but I guarantee in your moment of quiet, you'll feel it. You may not see us thinking about you, but in your moment of meditation and reflection, you'll feel it. You may not see us concerned about your well-being, your welfare, but when you take a step back, you realize that you didn't get here by yourself. And there's much road ahead for you. And you won't get there by yourself. God loves you. And so do you. Be blessed, not stressed. And serve